Well, all right. I'm Ed Rondthaler, and Dot, my wife and I came to Croton 3 weeks before Pearl Harbor in 1941. We were originally grew up together in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and met each other at ninth grade high school. I'd been put back a year, flunked ninth grade, and that got me in her class, and it all came from a Christmas card that I sent her. So we parted. She came to New York before I did to be a nurse, to learn nursing at the Presbyterian Hospital in New York, and of course, I came up after college. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and came up in 1929. We were married the next year, and I have had a life mostly in typography. It's been my interesting work, and developing photographic typesetting and so forth. We lived first in Greenwich Village for a couple of years, and then we got robbed twice and decided that was enough of that, so we moved out to Bay Ridge, and then had 3 boys and came up here with them, and have lived on Nordica Drive ever since. Of course, we were on the Croton River all the time. Our oldest boy was just beginning school. Our children were 3 years apart. Ed was 6, and Dave was 3, and Tim was nothing. He wasn't even 1 when we came up here. So and they very much grew up on the river. And we knew Cornu, and he lived in the ferry house at the manor house. We knew him very early on, and he was a wonderful person. He's about 20 years older than I, and he seemed very old to me at that time. 56 years old, I think he was, but he loved the river. Cornu told me quite a bit about his past. His mother was Swiss, his dad French. He had there were 2 younger children. I guess a boy and a girl. I'm not sure about that. They lived in New York, down in lower New York, and one day all of them, the 5 of them, were on a corner, and the dad walked away and nobody ever saw him since then. He just left. His mother got a job in a hotel as a cleaner or a housekeeper or something like that. I don't know what. And the hotel gave curtained off the end of a hallway, and to put 2 or 3 beds in there, and that was where they lived. He was 13 years old, and the other children were younger. So he had to get a job, and he got a job in a house that does writing names on diplomas. Now there's a term for that. It's not calligraphy. He wasn't a calligrapher. He was too bad. That's what happens when you get to be 93. At any rate, he was just the messenger there. But he watched the boys, the young men who were doing this. I'll call it calligraphy. I hate to call it that because that's the wrong word. And learned how to do it himself. And from these other fellows, he learned that the cheapest way to have the most fun was to canoe. They all had canoes at the various canoe clubs around New York, the Dyckman Street one and the Englewood Canoe Club, and there were others. So Theodore, that was his name, Theodore Cornu. Theodore, as he went along, finally got a little money together, and there was a hardware store that sold canoes, and they had a fire, and he got one of the somewhat damaged canoes for $25, and he kept this canoe down under a dock on the Hudson River downtown, and he could get in under there because there were loose planks under the dock, and nobody else was coming in there, so of course perfectly safe. And he kept his canoe under the dock and repaired it gradually, and then would go out canoeing. When he got enough money, he joined the Dyckman Street Canoe Club, and that's at 200th Street, and that was good. But later on, he changed to the Englewood Canoe Club, which was across the river on the west side of the Hudson, and he liked that better. And Egon Ottinger was also in the Englewood Canoe Club. And Egon Ottinger, who gave $800,000 to the library, the Croton Library, 3 or 4 years ago, was a great canoeist in his young days. He often won contests and so forth. I knew him, of course, and they were both, Cornu and Egon, were both good canoeists. Well, Cornu used to, in the summer, you see, he had never married, so he was independent and could do the things that interested him, he and another fella used to come up to the Croton River and camp alongside where Indian Brook goes into the Croton River. Now, you may not know where Indian Brook is, but if you went to the Van Cortlandt Manor Ferry House and went directly across the Croton River there, you would come to Indian Brook, which comes down from the Ossining side, from the Crotonville side. And they camped there for several summers. And they kept looking over, it was pretty wet camping there. And they kept looking over at the ferry house, which wasn't occupied then. And after 2 or 3 summers, they got up their courage and approached Miss Van Cortlandt to ask if they could camp on their near the ferry house. And she said, yes, if you'll keep everything neat. And of course, Cornu was very neat. There was no question about that. So they moved over there on high ground. And he said that was just wonderful. Things weren't wet and all the time, and they could really have a good time there. Well, after a couple of summers of that, his partner, whose name was Berger, his partner, I'm glad I remembered that because I'd lost that name for a long time. It just comes back to me, Berger. his wife was getting upset about him being away all summer long camping with Cornu, and she rebelled and said he had to quit and had to get a job. And as Cornu reported it to me, and this is absolutely true, Cornu said he got a job with a grocery store. And I visualized him getting some sort of a clerk job or maybe a manager of a grocery store, until some years later I read in a Fortune magazine that that Berger was the financial advisor for Huntington Hartford, and the grocery store was the A&P. So, but Cornu had he just got a job in the grocery store. Couldn't have any more fun. That's what he said. That's exactly what he said. He got a job in the grocery store and couldn't have any more fun. Oh boy, that tells a lot about Cornu. So we kept our canoe down at the Cornu's, and Cornu built canoes, beautiful wooden canoes, all wood. They were gorgeous, and he hung them from the ceiling of the ferry house. You'd go in there and here would be canoes hanging from the ceiling. He may have sold them one occasionally, I don't know. Oh, there's a story about the whaler, that's right. And he was building it. He was a great Indian lover, and he knew exactly how the Indians built these things. And he was using the same dimensions that the Indians used on their whalers. And he wanted to do this. It's true that the Indians would have covered it with something. He ended up covering it with a canvas, but all the dimensions, it was 6 feet wide at the widest place and 3 feet deep. So this was a whopping big thing. And he had been building it for several years. And I asked him what he was building it for. Well, he said, I want to show him something. I didn't know who M was until I found out later on who M was. M was the fisherman from Haverstraw, and he evidently knew some of them over there. And one day it was after the war, because the Rowleys had moved here by that time on the Nordica Drive. And so it must have been 1946. We'd had just come home from church on Sunday, and Dot was getting dinner when the telephone rang. Cornu had a telephone. He didn't have electricity or anything like that, but he had a telephone because his mother lived there, and he wanted that in case of an emergency with her. So I answered the phone, and he said, we're launching the whaler. Can you come? And I said to Dot, dearie, Cornu, that's Cornu on the phone. He's launching the whaler. Oh, she said, can't you ask him if he can wait? I'm just putting dinner on the table. And I, like a fool, conveyed that to Cornu, and he said, nope, the tide won't wait. So we let the food go, and with the boys, we all went down, and I realized on the way that, look here, this is a great event. This is a terrific event for Croton. We've got to do something to celebrate it. And I got the Rowleys and the Rowley boys, and maybe I got someone else. See, there weren't many houses here at all then on the street. And I got some others, and we went down, and by the time we got there, M, who were the fishermen from Haverstraw, and Cornu had carried this thing from up on the hill down, and were about ready to slide it down the bank over the periwinkle there. And Elmer Rowley and I rushed to help this thing go into the water, and the wives and the children all applauded from the side as the thing sailed out, and it was beautiful. He just wanted to show them that he could build a whaler or something like that. I guess that's all it was. I don't know. You never quite know about Cornu. He went to a Cooper Union, you see, and he was a letterer and illustrator and historian. He read a lot of these old Indian things, and he was determined, and a great hater of the railroad. Oh, he hated the railroad because they ran oil into the water, and that was bad. There used to be a great big pipe down there, the pipe that large, and often when we would go down, paddle down out into the Hudson, I would see at low tide, you would see water, oil coming out of that pipe into the river. And we used to, I got a picture once of the oil glistening on the river, and I turned it over to the Hudson Fishermen's Association, Ed Garrett over there, and I think he used that in what he's done to help clean up the river. And of course now, when our son Tim came back last summer and went down and swim in the river, he said, "Dad, this river is just beautiful compared with what it was when they used to swim in it as boys." He said, "You just can't believe what a change has taken place in the river."